August 2023. Manchester City sell Cole Palmer to Chelsea for £40 million. City basically considered him surplus to requirements. But 18 months later, try 33 Premier League goals, becoming a European final hero and boasting a transfer value north of £150 million. Today in this explainer, we're telling the financial story of how a supposed reject became the Premier League's most valuable young player. Let's get right into it.
That £150 million figure. It's wild. In just a year and a half, Palmer's valuation went absolutely supernova, jumping from that initial £40 million fee to a staggering £150 million. In football finance, that's not just a good bit of business for Chelsea, that is a massive structural market failure. It's a colossal miscalculation by the most data-obsessed, hyper-analytical club on the planet. I mean, they mispriced an asset by over £100 million.
A little later in this explainer, we'll reveal exactly what City's internal assessment actually said about Palmer and why they made a decision that cost them big time. But the story doesn't just go straight up. We're also going to look at a 90-second window in Berlin that changed his commercial value literally overnight. And stick around because there's a final twist. By July 2026, his value swings again, and definitely not the way you'd expect.
So to understand this massive pricing error, we got to look at what City actually saw. Palmer joined City's academy at just 8 years old. He came through the exact same pipeline as Phil Foden. And honestly, inside the building, they knew the kid had talent. He secured back-to-back Premier League 2 titles. Plus, he did get some chances in the first team. We're talking 41 appearances, a Champions League medal, 6 goals. He wasn't invisible by any means.
But here's the problem. The root of City's decision was the absolute logjam ahead of him. Just think about the guys blocking his path. You've got Erling Haaland coming off a 52-goal season. Kevin De Bruyne, arguably the best creative midfielder of his generation. Foden, Bernardo Silva, Julian Alvarez, Jeremy Doku. It's a joke. In Pep Guardiola's trouble-winning squad, mathematically, Palmer was like 7th or 8th in the queue for maybe 2 attacking spots. So from a pure accounting perspective, selling him for pure profit made total sense to City.
See, City didn't make an emotional mistake here. They made a modeling mistake. Their data models captured exactly what he was doing in those 41 games, fragmented substitute minutes, 20 minutes here, a cup start there. But you know what the data couldn't see? It couldn't see his ceiling if he actually got 3,000 minutes as the main guy. You literally cannot model a player's true ceiling from a role he's never played. They valued him purely as a bench player, and well, that blind spot was worth £100 million.
Which brings us to the buyers. When Chelsea pulled the trigger on this, the public reaction was brutal. Chelsea have no idea what they're doing. That was the consensus. Remember, this was the Todd Boehly and Clear Lake era where they'd already splashed £1 billion on bizarre 8-year contracts. They were kind of the punchline of European football at the time. So dropping 40 mil on a kid who couldn't even get off City's bench, people thought it was the ultimate joke.
But internally, Chelsea actually had some solid logic here. First off, he was 21. That's a pre-peak asset, meaning they could potentially flip him later at a premium. Second, he was already Premier League proven. No culture shock, no adaptation risk. Third, at $40 million, he was way cheaper than some of their other gambles, like Mudryk. And finally, Mauricio Pochettino was there to offer exactly what City couldn't, the number 10 role, penalties, and just total creative freedom.
Handing him the keys to that number 10 role initiated a complete shift in asset class. At City, rotational sub. At Chelsea, primary creator and penalty taker. They didn't just buy a squad player. They bought a talisman. It's the same human being, but an entirely different financial asset class. And the sporting return? Instantaneous. 22 league goals, 25 across all comps, and the PFA Young Player of the Year award.
Chelsea realized exactly what they had, which brings us to this crazy number, 2033. In August 2024, they essentially tore up his initial deal and handed him a massive 9-year contract extension, locking him down until 2033. This wasn't just a reward, it was a mechanism for total market control. From that moment on, nobody is buying Cole Palmer unless Chelsea sets the price.
But wait, let's hit pause for a second. Everything we've talked about so far, that's just football value. Goals, assists, expected metrics. We need to shift gears entirely. Berlin, 73rd minute. Because in about 4 seconds on this night, Cole Palmer stopped being just a great Premier League footballer and completely exploded into a global commercial property.
Now we have to clear up a major public misconception about the Euro 2024 final. Yes, Palmer was subbed on in the 70th minute. Yes, in the 73rd minute, he scored this absolutely iconic pinpoint equalizer to make it 1-1 against Spain. But in the 86th minute, Mikel Oyarzabal scores for Spain. Spain wins 2-1. England lost the final. Palmer didn't win them the trophy. The result was heartbreak. But you know what? For Palmer's valuation, the final score didn't matter at all.
Why? Because in that exact moment, he became a brand asset. Standing in front of 600 million viewers worldwide, despite the losing effort, Palmer delivered that emotionless, arms-crossed, cold Palmer celebration. It was ice cold, but more importantly, it was copyable. Kids on playgrounds could do it without a ball. Practically overnight, he transformed into an infinitely marketable brand asset for Nike.
And the momentum just kept snowballing. He takes that massive Euro 2024 global profile and rolls it right into the July 2025 Club World Cup final. He leads Chelsea against PSG, scores twice, Chelsea wins 3-0, and he casually takes home the golden ball as the player of the tournament. It was this back-to-back stacking of global sporting success that really drove his media valuation straight up to that $150 million peak. Let's break down the two balance sheets here, because this is where the genius of the deal really shines. Transfer value? That's a one-time fee driven by age, output, contract length. You only realize it if you sell. But commercial value? That is recurring revenue. For a Chelsea side desperately trying to rebuild its identity, Palmer became the face of the franchise. He was the default guy on matchday graphics, the engine for shirt sales, and an absolute magnet for sponsorships. When you run the numbers, it puts Chelsea's ridiculous return on investment into sharp financial focus. Because of that super long contract, Chelsea could amortize his original £40 million fee over 9 years. On their accounting books, Cole Palmer only cost them roughly £4.5 million annually, yet they were holding an asset peaking at £150 million on the open market. In accounting terms, it's like driving a Ferrari but only paying the lease on a Fiat. Okay, let's pivot back to Manchester City, because their real loss wasn't actually that £40 million fee. They made pure profit on that for FFP. No, the true loss was the replacement cost. By 2025, Kevin De Bruyne was leaving. Suddenly, City finds themselves desperately needing a left-footed, press-resistant creator who can bag 15-plus goals a season. Buying a player with that exact profile in 2026, that's going to cost well over $100 million. They literally sold the exact solution to a problem they didn't even know they had yet.
But remember I promised you a twist? The story doesn't just end in pure triumph. The 2025-2026 season delivered a really brutal reality check. First, a groin injury during warm-ups completely derailed his momentum. Then, of all things, a broken toe from a freak accident at home. The result was a massive collapse in output. He managed just 10 Premier League goals in 26 games, while a chaotic Chelsea burned through managers again and stumbled to a 10th-place finish.
And that leads us to a genuinely shocking climax. May 2026, Thomas Tuchel announces England's 26-man squad for the World Cup. Cole Palmer, the hero of the Euro 2024 final, the $150 million talisman, is completely left out, snubbed. He was left to watch the biggest tournament in the world from his living room sofa. Crazy, right? This wild volatility is perfectly reflected in his valuation trajectory. From $40 million in 2023, skyrocketing to a $150 million peak in mid-2025, his value then dips back to roughly $100 million by July 2026. It brilliantly shows that in football finance, valuing a player isn't like valuing a house or a fixed object. You're valuing a highly volatile trajectory. City mispriced him on the way up, sure, but anyone writing him off after this recent dip, they might be mispricing him on the way down.
So, that leaves us with one final provocative question. Is Cole Palmer still the best value transfer of the decade? Does he bounce back and prove to be a masterclass signing under a new manager like Xabi Alonso? Or did Manchester City, who are almost always right about these things, just write him off a little too early? I want to know what you think. If you can think of a better value transfer out there, let me know the specific numbers. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the numbers.